back to the Evolve and Revolve Q&A series. Today's question comes in the form of an email from Corey Taylor in Palm Springs, California. His email reads, Dear Mr. Echo, I have an LGBT question for you. I don't have any LGBT friends, but I do hear a lot of people on social media talking about pronouns. I know what pronouns are and how they're used, but I'm confused about all of this they, them, he, him type of stuff. And why do transgender people get so upset if you do not call them by the pronouns that they want? I'm not trying to be mean, I just don't have any gay friends, male or female, and I figured you could give me a straight answer. No pun intended. Thanks, Corey Taylor. Now, before I go on, I want to point out that I love how he spells Taylor with an I instead of with a Y, and I'm guessing that's so that nobody confuses him with the famous frontman for Slipknot and Stone Sour, Corey Taylor with a Y. So, Corey Taylor with an I have an answer for your question. But before I get to that, let's just get clear on exactly what we're talking about here. There are a lot of LGBT orientations out there. For example, pansexual, which basically means that you don't choose your partner based on their gender. Or there's gender fluid, which is people who may be very masculine on one day and then very feminine on another. But whether they are masculine or feminine on one day or another, doesn't matter which day, it is on all levels of behavior, from how they dress to how they speak, how they act, how they react, even the name that they go by. A lot of gender fluid people will choose a name for themselves that could be male or female, like Casey or Chris. And none of this is a mental disorder like schizophrenia or multiple personalities. For some of us, it's just what comes naturally, and for some of us, it's what's known as gender dysphoria, which is discomfort or anxiety brought on by the social stresses of having a personal identity that does not match or align with your biological identification, does not match with the gender in which you were born biologically. This leads me to my next point. In order to keep this video from getting too complex and to get you that straightforward answer that you wanted, let's focus on the two orientations that rely on pronouns the most. First would be transgender, meaning someone who is transitioning from either male to female or female to male. Second, we'll focus on non-binary, which is someone who does not identify as either male or female. Now, in the 70s and 80s, this was called being androgynous, but the word androgynous refers more to someone's appearance or aesthetic, whereas non-binary is more a fact of existence. So, androgyny is kind of really just a question of perception, of other people's perception of your appearance or self-representation. So, since non-binary people do not identify as male or female, that's where they, them comes from. When you're referring to a non-binary person, it would be insulting to label them or title them as a male or a female, so you use they, them. For example, if you and a friend were meeting for coffee with another friend who happened to be non-binary, and they texted to say that they were going to be late, you would say they just texted me that they'll be here in 10 minutes, as opposed to he just texted me that he'll be here in 10 minutes, or she just texted me. Now, a lot of transgender people feel like they were born into the wrong body, or born into the wrong biological gender. So, we address them as the gender that they are transitioning to. If they are transitioning from male to female, you would refer to them as she or her. And if they're transitioning from female to male, you would refer to them as he or him. Once someone begins transitioning, their mind and their hearts already identify as what it is that they're transitioning to. Their body just hasn't caught up yet. And once the transition is complete, there will be no questions about which pronouns are the right ones, because it will just come naturally. Now, as for your question about why it's so important to use the proper pronouns, the answer to that is simple. Respect, consideration, acceptance, civility. Take your pick. There are plenty more. I could keep going, but I won't. And the flip side of those answers is that it's considered hurtful not to address them as the proper pronouns. It's disrespectful. Purposely not using the proper pronouns says, I refuse to accept or acknowledge the real you. It's kind of a slap in the face. Like, for example, when a woman gets married and takes her spouse's last name, that's the last name that you would address her by. If she went from Miss Johnson to Mrs. Kendricks, you wouldn't keep calling her Miss Johnson. You would call her Mrs. Kendricks. You wouldn't refuse to call her by her new married name because it's not the one she was assigned at birth. So don't do that here either. Be respectful. If your brother Nathan is in the process of becoming Natalie, then you address them as Natalie at all times, even if they are not present at the time of the conversation where they are being mentioned. If your friend Tammy is on her way to becoming Tommy, then you got to stop calling her Tammy just because she still looks like Tammy and doesn't yet look like Tommy. That's called dead naming, and it is hurtful as well as disruptive to the act of transitioning. It's called dead naming because the name that they used to be identified by is dead, like a used up battery. It served its purpose for a while, and now it's being replaced by something more effective. The person that old name represented is gone, and the old name goes with it. So, even if you're a little awkward or uncomfortable about using the proper pronouns with somebody or using their self-chosen name, do it anyways. It provides you an opportunity for personal growth, but more important than that, and better than that, it relieves some of the weight off of the other person's daily struggles. You think it's hard knowing which pronouns to use when you're speaking to an LGBT person? Think about how hard it must be to spend every day feeling like you're in the wrong body. To go out and, let's say you see yourself as Monica, but you know that everywhere you go, people see you as Armando. That's gotta be tough. It's called transitioning because it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. So when you meet a trans or non-binary person, it's okay if you slip up a little bit with the proper titles or pronouns. Just correct yourself and keep going. If you make a mistake, apologize, and then correct yourself, keep the conversation moving, And don't make a big deal about the mistake, because when you do, it makes it awkward for everybody involved. So, Corey, I hope that I've answered your question, because that's all I've got. So, let me close out with this. It doesn't matter if it's nature or if it's nurture. And it doesn't matter if someone wakes up one day to the realization that they're in the wrong body, or if this is something that they have been aware of for their entire life. Each and every one of us has a vision of ourselves that we are trying every day to achieve. So when you use the proper titles and pronouns, you are showing love. You are showing consideration. You are showing respect. And you are saying that I accept you as you are, and I see the vision that you have of yourself. And when you do that, everybody wins. We are all humans, and humanity means unity. So be sure to catch the next Q&A video, where I will be answering a bunch of your questions about me, instead of the usual questions about you. But until then, I'm Chris Patterson, alive, awake, and unfucking breakable. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.